It says, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort those who are in any trouble with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. For as the sufferings of Christ abound in us, so our consolation also abounds through Christ. Now if we are afflicted, it is for your consolation and salvation, which is effective for enduring the same sufferings which we also suffer. Or if we are comforted, it is for your consolation and salvation. And our hope for you is steadfast, because we know that as you are partakers of the sufferings, so you will also partake of the consolation.
Yes.
We talked for just a few minutes this morning about the God of all comfort. Because as we've talked about, our area was devastated last night. I sat there this morning and she began to show me picture after picture of Sulphur, my hometown. And it's ripped apart. I've never seen that level of damage in Sulphur before. And they're telling them we can't even go down right now because it's got to be cleared before we can even get into the area to help with the cleanup. That's why we're dressed like we are this morning. We thought we were going right after we left here, but they can't get us in right now. But Sulphur was devastated. Holdenville was hit. Ardmore was hit. Ardmore got hit by 4 different tornadoes. Haven't got all the damage yet. Marietta was hit. The Dollar Tree distribution center down in Marietta is destroyed. It's gone. We talked about earlier, the highways around Holdenville are shut down. I-35 is one of the longest stretches I've ever seen of I-35 shut down in Oklahoma. It shut down from the Texas line at least all the way past Ardmore. And power lines across the interstate. Dickie and I were talking this morning. I don't know the power lines were allowed to legally cross an interstate. So it had to have been the poles that were ripped up and blown on the other side. But yeah, it's just closed. And we sit here, we come to church at Allen this morning and we got a lot of rain last night, but we're all okay. Most of us still have power. It's hard to think that just 55 minutes away, or what is Holdenville, 25 minutes away? Parts of, and like I said, if you've seen any of the devastation of Sulphur, it defies words. It's just downtown is gone. It's just literally gone. And we were talking this morning to my grandparents-in-law, I guess is how you say that, my wife's grandparents. We had to call it and let them know that we were okay because they watch the weather for Oklahoma and they see all the tornadoes last night and they're all freaking out and worried about us. And I told them that we were talking to them about what was going on, and we told them that we were going to handle service this morning because our pastor couldn't get out of Ardmore. And Gramps tells me, he says, well, and I understand the heart behind it, and I understand why he said what he said. He said, well, he says, you won't have any problem having anything to talk about this morning, will you?
Yeah.
And I told him then, he didn't hear it. He didn't quite hear it, but I said, yeah, I do. I said, I get to talk about the goodness of God. Because yes, the buildings are demolished and downtown will never look the same. The loss of life from Sulphur has been minimal. I've heard that there's fatalities, but we haven't heard who, what, when. We haven't heard specifics, but they're minimal. And that was the thing. There were 16 tornadoes touched down in this part of Oklahoma yesterday. And there's been very few deaths that have been reported. So, yeah, maybe if you're sitting there and your house is just literally shredded, maybe you're having a hard time seeing the goodness of God. But how about you look at the fact that you weren't in the house when it shredded? You're not the parents in Holdenville that have to live with the fact that they let their 4-year-old, which is the way they're going to feel about it, that they let their 4-month-old baby get sucked out of the house. Try being one of those parents. Think of the questions that you would ask yourself. Why wasn't that baby in my arms? Why didn't I go with the baby? I mean, all of the things that a parent's just going to ask, because you can't help it. Because we're parents and we're responsible for our children and we take all of that stuff very personal. Hey, I hope y'all have a good time. I hope they make it.
Thank you.
And I hope y'all have a good time.
Thank you.
Enjoy it.
And so, yeah. We can celebrate the goodness of God this morning. We can celebrate the fact that what we got was rain. Those storms, they danced all around us. I mean, that, like I said, they hit west of town. They hit 10 miles west. They went up, they hit Holdenville. Personally, I give God a lot of credit for that, because there's a lot of prayers praying, Lord, we don't want them to hit anywhere, but we sure don't want them to hit here. You know, I can't imagine if the tornado that hit Sulphur would have hit Allen, we wouldn't have much left. And you know, and you know, it's times like this that the world looks up and they want to ask the Christian people, they want to ask us, where is your God? Where was your God when all that happened, when that 4-month-old baby got sucked out of the house? Where was your God that you claim is so loving and so benevolent? And I'll tell you where my God was. The same thing I told people after the Murrah building got blew up in 1995. And I was sitting there, and people were asking me, where's God? Where was God? Where was God? And I said, where was God? There were supposed to be about 1,500 more people in the Murrah building that morning at that time than there actually was. Because God showed up and people had flat tires. People just had bad feelings. People just, same way with 9/11 when the Twin Towers fell. Testimony after testimony after testimony of people that God prompted their heart that day not to go. So when it's not hard. Here's the thing about it. As the church, we need to always know where God is in these situations.
Yes.
Because God is where He's always been. But there is also a system, this weather system. That was one of the things Grammy said this morning. She said, we need to figure out whoever's in charge of that, then you need to tell them to stop. That's enough. Well, there's a weather system that's put in place by God years ago when he built all this. And so it does its thing. The jet stream flows and it does its thing. And we live in the middle of a part of the country that gets racked by tornadoes. If we lived down in Florida, we'd have to deal with hurricanes. If down in New Orleans, where Dickie's daughter lives, we'd have to deal with hurricanes. When I lived out in California, we had to deal with earthquakes. You know, there's natural disasters, because here's the thing. Romans talks about the very earth cries out for its creator. The earth is tired of all this stuff. It's tired of living under a curse. The earth wasn't designed. It wasn't built to live under a curse. It was built to sustain us forever. We were supposed to live forever. Even though God knew Adam and Eve would do what Adam and Eve did, the plan, you know, it's the same way with the commandments. We talked a lot about the Old Testament and the feast and all that. The commandments, you know, to give a chance. Hey, if you can live by these simple commandments that I give you, then my son's not going to have to come and die, knowing all the time that we wouldn't be able to man up and live by the commandments. It's just not in us. The heart's depraved. The heart's wicked. Paul said it best in my flesh. He said, I know that in my flesh is no good thing. There's people this morning that are celebrating because it wasn't them. And I'm sitting here this morning, I can't stop crying because my hometown got destroyed, even though nobody that I really know at this point that I know of right now, nobody that I was really close to died. You know, some friends' homes were destroyed, and that's all sad and horrible, but people are alive. So I'm sitting asking myself, dude, why? I guess because the area that I grew up as a boy, that I walked and lived among, they're gone. The donut shop was destroyed. You don't understand what that is, guys. I mean, come on, that was a bad one, because that's where we have friends, and we used to have donut day. Sometimes we'd meet from different job sites, and we'd show up at the donut shop, and we'd sit in there for an hour or two and have a couple of donuts and drink coffee and just catch up and visit. Can't do that anymore. The donut shop's gone. I mean, literally, it's not even there anymore. The Snack Shack East, which was a place that going back to 9/11, that's where I got gas. The day 9/11 happened, that's where I was working down Ardmore. That's where I got gas at. It's gone. I mean, I don't know whether they'll rebuild it or not. It upsets me that the world we live in today is always quick to jump on the Christians and say, where was your God when all of this bad stuff happens? But they never want to give him credit for a beautiful sunrise. They never want to give him credit for a nice spring rain that we needed that watered the crops and stuff. They never want to give him credit for all of that. But they want to ask, where was he when things go bad? You know, you can't. It's not fair. You know, if he's going to be God of the bad times, then you got to let him be God of the good times, or you don't have the right to make him God of the bad times. We can't sit there and say, all right, God, where were you when all the bad stuff happened? And the rest of our lives, we don't even want to acknowledge that there was a God. You know, it chaps me that I see people who will spend their entire lives and they'll never talk about God. Then when somebody dies, well, heaven gained another angel. Or, you know, and I get where you want to say that, but your child was a mass murderer that killed himself in the middle of it all. It's kind of hard to preach that guy into heaven. Nobody's judged. Nobody's judged. Don't want to be. Not qualified for it. I've seen God's job, and I do not want it, Elijah. I'm not qualified for it. I don't want to put up with billions of me. Shoot. I have hard enough time dealing with me in the mirror, let alone deal with billions of me. And we don't even want to talk about it. Anyway, yes. Look. You know, one of my favorite songs by Rich Mullins, it says, Holy Jesus. And he says, part of it in there, he says, you've been king of my glory. Won't you be my prince of peace? And where was God? God's the same place he's always been. I'm not going to belabor the point. God's the same place he's always been. Waiting there to pick up the pieces. You know, and I guess if that makes him an unloving God, then I don't know. It's just that standard only gets applied to him. You know, I can go out there and you know, you don't hear anybody cussing in the name of Buddha. You don't hear anybody cussing in the name of Muhammad. You don't hear anybody cussing, you know, well, Confucius effing, you know, no, you don't hear any of that. No, it's God or Jesus. It's just a Christian God. It's just our God. And they want to ignore him most of the time and attack him when bad things happen in the world. And I'm going to tell you what, church, that's not even fair to any God. To any God. We serve a God that says we walk in love anyway. We serve a God that says we walk in love when it hurts. It says pray for those who use you. Bless those who despitefully use you. Pray for those who persecute you. Over and over and over and over. We're called to prefer others over yourself every time, all day, every situation. We're the only religion on the planet that does that preaches that level of love. And yet we're the only religion in the world that people seem to be flocking away from these days because he says love till it hurts. He says love till it hurts. He says you've not yet resisted the bloodshed. You know, no one's walked up and punched me in my mouth for being a child of God. No one's kicked down my door to take my Bibles or to threaten my life because I claim Jesus Christ as my Savior. We talk about that's happening all around the planet now in various other countries. But here, we've made it so nice and easy. America has gotten so spoiled that you see all these protests all around the country about, you know, on various sides of the, you know, it's crazy how our country can unanimously, Washington, who doesn't ever agree on anything, can unanimously stand with Israel. But yet the people of our country are more of them are standing with the Palestinians than they are with Israel. And I got news for the Palestinians. I don't have a problem with them, but the country, the area that they're trying to claim as their own, God gave it to Israel. He didn't give it to the Palestinians. We all know this. You know, and all of that started because Abram and Sarai thought God needed some help. That's how that started. He said, leave your family and go, and start with, Abram had to take Lot with him. God didn't say take anybody with him. God said, leave your family and go to a place I'll show you. Abram took Lot with him. We see what all that run into. The whole Sodom and Gomorrah thing and all of that happened because there's too many of them. They got too rich, overflew the land. Abram says, you go right, I'll go left. You go left, I'll go right. They split up, and then here to Sodom and Gomorrah get totally destroyed. Lot's wife turns into a pillar of salt. We all know the story. So, but the first thing they did wrong, they went down to Egypt because they heard there was a famine. So they went down to Egypt. And Abram proceeds to lie to the prince of Egypt about who his wife was. She's my sister. Which, come to find out, wasn't a lie because she was technically his sister. But it seemed to be okay back then. And so then when they found all about it, and to make up for the fact that the king almost did something he shouldn't do, he gave them Hagar. So they came out of Egypt with an Egyptian handmaiden that they didn't have when God said, leave your country and go to a land I'll show you. So they came out of Egypt with Hagar. And so they decide, well, God had this promise that God's promised to this heir. It's not happening. It's not happening. Maybe God needs some help. She says, why don't you go into my handmaiden Hagar? We'll have a son by her, and she can be the son. And there comes Ishmael, which is the whole other side. All the Palestinians, all of that, all descended from that side. And God said, no. So God said, I'm gonna bless Ishmael because he came from Abram. And he talks about he's going to be a mighty nation. They're going to be at war forever. And you still see all that happening over there. Because when God makes a promise, he keeps the promise. We're talking about the goodness of God this morning, and it's not hard if you study it out to see the goodness of God. You know, because God could have let us wipe ourselves out a long time ago. Like, it's amazing that the human race hasn't managed to do that. Seems they've tried. But I don't really have anything else. I'm stuck on the goodness of God this morning. I'm shell-shocked by what happened. I haven't even got to go down there and see it firsthand yet. And I know I've got to wait off in that mess tomorrow. We've got to wait off in that mess probably tomorrow. And you know, y'all can keep us in prayer for that, because that's not going to be easy. It's one thing to see the drone footage and everything else of just block after block after block. You see it on the news all the time, but it's in another state. It's in Nebraska. It's in Kansas. It's in Texas. It's northeastern Oklahoma. It's not Sulphur. It's not the town that you grew up in. It's not Holdenville. It's not Marietta. Ardmore. We're talking about the storms last night, Ray. If you haven't heard, Ardmore got hit by 4 different tornadoes, and 3 of them hit Sulphur.
Well, I heard they got hit, but I wasn't sure how bad the damage it was.
Downtown Sulphur's demolished.
Oh.
It's just gone. And Marietta, the Dollar Tree Distribution Center got demolished. It's gone. It's just, I-35 is closed from the Texas state line all the way, at least as far north as Ardmore.
It hit a hospital too, I heard.
Okay, that's it.
Now, how about Holdenville?
Holdenville got hit. There's some damage. The 3 major highways around Holdenville are closed right now.
Oh,
because the power lines down and stuff like that.
You know where the cell barn is?
Where?
Cell barn?
Yeah.